Yeah. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Sweep you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Sweep you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started. Yeah, get your boots ready. We're about to go on a trip where we wrestle, nobody settling or calling it quits. You're here for the grit, betcha this stuff is amazing. You're stumbling, welcome to the bump in the apron. Step into it, the hardest part of the ring. Here to bring fun, yeah, and this art he is king. It's the best thing, making sure you don't tap out. Don't go soft with the hardest podcast out. And it's not just another one, it's clear. Off the rest, in this content, none contest. Take the nonsense off the steps. You know it's nothing but pure gems when it's coming off the chest. Get it? Now it's time to sit and relax. Get your mind blown away, ain't no skipping this track. Have you paying more attention, no listening gap. Get everything I ever wanted, no giving it back. Yeah.
Ooh. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Apron Bump Podcast. I am your host, the hardest part of the ring, known in some circles as Kyle. And we have a dandy for you. Progress Wrestling Chapter 17 from January 25th, 2015. And this is a very interesting one for a variety of reasons. As always, I mean, with all the timelines I cover, it's always funny to see kind of earlier iterations of wrestlers, the early stages of their careers, the building blocks before they got big. That's always, to me, one of the most interesting things about watching old wrestling, talking about it with other people. But this one in particular is very interesting because as of this episode dropping, we're only a few weeks removed from Wrestle Kingdom 16, which was a great show. Great show from New Japan. I don't keep up with New Japan very frequently. Maybe I'll start. But then again, I always say that I will and then I don't. But whatever the case may be, Wrestle Kingdom, always a great event. But this past year, 2022, was main evented by Kazuchika Okada and a man that is very prevalent on this chapter that we're covering, Will Osperay. And even if you don't watch New Japan or independent wrestling or whatever, you know who Will Ospreay is. I mean, he's one of the biggest stars today, maybe the biggest that's not signed to a major company. Unless you count New Japan as a major company, which some people don't even think it exists. But point being, Will Ospreay is such a force nowadays. He's such a presence. He's a big lad. He's put on some weight, but he still moves. He still has the fluidity of the movement that he had as a child. I consider 2015 Will Ospreay a child. So we just saw Will Ospreay main eventing Wrestle Kingdom as this brooding dickhead of a heel. This guy, he's walking out with 12 different championships. He has the old Ultimo Dragon thing going. Like he has the glittery jacket, the complex tights. He's spectacle there's a lot going into his presentation. But let's take a step back about 7 years before, almost to the day, at Progress Chapter 17, and we see Will Ospreay as this twinkish boy going out there with a second grade picture day haircut. He's scrawny. I mean, he's not scrawny. He's not like famished, but he's, compared to today, he's just deflated. I mean, this dude looks like a child here, but he's still so fucking good, even 7 years ago. And that's why he's in the main event on this chapter, fighting for the Progress Championship against Jimmy Havoc. Yes, the reign of terror continues for Jimmy Havoc. The whole deal with Havoc and Ospreay, and we talk a lot about that in the episode and why it was so good. But this is among the best that I've seen so far, and according to my guests who are more familiar with the later chapters, this is probably one of the better storylines they ever did in Progress. So really good stuff coming in this chapter, and watching the show, it was the main event was amazing. I'll just simply put it like that. I mean, there was a lot going into it. It's not just wrestling. There's storyline elements. There's psychology to it. That the way it's built throughout the chapter, beautiful. It's all beautiful. But outside of that, I mean, as always, the show is just loaded with guys that we see in NXT and NXT UK nowadays, which is always fun, including the finals of the Natural Progression series, where we got Zach Gibson versus Flash Morgan Webster in the co-main event, which is a belter of a match as well. The rest of the show is, again, Progress is always a fun watch, always an easy watch, always a fun time to talk about. We got a tag team title match, which has a lot of effects going forward. I'll just put it that way. Somebody's nose explodes, which RJ Singh warned me about in the last Progress chapter that I covered, chapter 16. Somebody gets murdered on this show, literally. Oh, yes. And this is also the last Progress show for Mark Andrews, who has just landed a TNA contract. Mandrews. Yeah, this is not when I was watching TNA, but good for Mark Andrews here. He's on his way to TNA, and he's having they have quite the send off for him. Man, this intro is just full of teasers, huh? Just taking you to the edge, and then I just stop jerking you off. That's what this is filled with. Great chapter, and had a great time talking about it with my guests, the host of the Tea and Tights podcast, Dan and Andy, or Dandy, as I like to call him, huh? But yes, the Tea and Tights podcast. Catch it wherever you listen to podcasts. They cover a good amount of what they cover is UK independent wrestling. So Current Day Progress, WXW, Rev Pro, all that stuff. And there's a lot of moving parts nowadays because, if you're listening in the future or whatever, right now we're still in the pandemic, of the COVID-19, and the UK took a hit. I mean, as did everybody, but I actually talk a good amount about this, which was fun because I don't get to talk a lot about Current Day Progress, but Progress is making moves nowadays, and that's the kind of stuff that Dan and Andy talk about in their podcast. So if you're looking to kind of expand your horizons into the UK realm, or if you're a fan of NXT UK, they talk a lot about that as well, or just UK related stuff with WWE and AEW. Like they talked about Tony Storm getting released, like that kind of stuff. So really fun group of guys, really enjoyable podcast they do over there. That is the Tea and Tights podcast. So with that, let's progress into the episode. Never gets old. Progress Wrestling. God, I'm a nasally asshole today. I have, AIDS. Progress Wrestling, Chapter 17, with myself and Big Daddy Dan and Little Daddy and with Dan and Andy from the Tea and Tights podcast.
Bigger, harder, faster.
Love it. So I checked it out last night as well. I guess overall thoughts on the chapter before we kind of get into other subjects.
I mean, it was a good chapter. It is kind of what emulated how Progress became what it is, and it was through great matches. And there were certainly a few of those on this chapter 17.
It was really interesting for me watching back, because I haven't watched many of the early chapters. Seeing a lot of the guys that I know now when they were young and not quite having the bodies that they do now.
Right.
It was
like Noam Darr, for example.
Yes!
Was a little bit more, a little softer, I would say.
puppy fat.
Yeah.
Right.
Baby fat.
Hey, he's in better shape than I am. Well, I'm not casting stones, but I mean that dude's he's all diced nowadays, so it was bizarre to see.
Big time.
But Mastiff was bigger as well, but at that point he was much more girthier at that.
But this is 6-7 years ago now, isn't it? 7 years.
January of 15, I believe, right? Yeah. So 7 years. It's crazy because chapter 17, it feels so early in the grand scheme of things, but from the beginning to now, it's been 3 years for the company, which I guess they would eventually move on to like a show per month, right?
Yeah, eventually, they do start to move towards, almost around every 3 weeks. And then they were the international tours as well, Germany, the States. I think they did a WrestleMania weekend.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so just for context, so I kind of started from the beginning and we're here at chapter 17. I haven't really seen anything beyond that. I know a few things that happen, a few people that come in and out, and some of the current faces that we see nowadays. But I guess for you guys, were you guys watching from the first chapter and on, or did you kind of catch on at a later time?
No, for me, I was... Considering I do the show now about UK wrestling, I was quite ignorant to UK wrestling for a long time. And really, if it wasn't WWE, TNA or ROH, New Japan, I just wasn't interested. But then I just started like, where are all these great British wrestlers suddenly coming from? Will Ospreray.
Yeah.
And I just started to dive into it. As lockdown hit, originally, I started writing a history of progress up until about the speaking out movement at that point, which is when I stopped writing that. But I did start with, I think I got up to about chapter 50, sort of like going from 1 to 50.
Right.
I'm still ignorant. But no,
Really?
I was always a Rev Pro fan. So
Okay.
I watched a lot of Rev Pro, not as much Progress. I'd drop in and out every now and again if there was a specific match I wanted to see. And I was a big fan of a few of the guys on there, so it was always good to sort of catch up with specific wrestlers.
Right. Yeah, I haven't really checked out a lot of Rev Pro other than a few matches kind of out of context here and there. I have recently gotten into WXW a little bit, and I kind of watch it along the same timeline as I'm watching these Progress shows. So I'm watching, 2014, when Tommy N was the champion and Big Daddy Walter and all those guys. As far as because I'll ask you guys, because you guys have obviously a podcast dedicated to indie wrestling in the UK, which I think is really cool. So you guys are clearly very knowledgeable. Where do you think Progress ranks among the independents in the UK?
It was you could argue it out with them and Rev Pro UK as who have been the number one, who have, I would have said Progress at one point did take it over. And really became the be-all and end-all of wrestling. That was when you started having all the international talents and the NXT UK and NXT talents.
I think the big difference is Rev Pro is a family-friendly show. Progress is an over-18s show. So I think there's a big difference there, but they're definitely either number one or number two.
Okay, so you're saying Rev Pro doesn't have anybody getting murdered by getting stabbed in the chest?
No, it's one of those things that you don't see that often in Rev Pro.
It is fairly rare, I would say.
It's a hell of an intro, though, isn't it, to a show? I remember watching that. Oh, God.
It was intense.
Yeah.
It was intense.
They watched too much Dexter.
Yeah, I made the same note as well. But actually, before we get into that, just because there's so much going on with Progress nowadays, just wanted to touch on current day Progress a little bit, because I don't really get a chance to talk a lot about it, mainly because I don't really watch it yet, at least. But Progress, live crowds returning here later this month, right? Is that correct? Back in the ballroom, where I guess that's kind of their home base, isn't it?
Yeah, they are coming back to the Electric Ballroom. It is very, very exciting. And, of course, they have new owners.
Yes. In my notes somewhere. Lee McAteer and Martin Best.
Yeah.
Any content? I've never heard these names before. Are they of any prominence at all?
They did have a wrestling travel company, I believe, prior, long before this. And they also are... They own League Two football club, Tranmere Rovers. who I guess if we're talking like American, it would be third league football.
Okay, so like minor leagues.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
yeah.
Canadian football.
They still would get sort of audiences of thousands.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And what's amazing is these guys have taken over Progress. One of the first things they've done is Progress has Club Progress, which is a membership package where you get discounted tickets,
Right.
etc. And the first thing they've done is phone up all the members of Club Progress to chat to them and find out what they want from Progress, how they think it can go. And I just think that is an amazing way of showing your commitment to a company that you've just got involved with.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's what made Progress a part of it, is what made it so popular, is that fan interaction. It felt like you were a part of something special. And I'm hoping they get back to what they once were, because, I mean, you brought up earlier the speaking out stuff is tough. NXT UK, grabbing all of their main stars is tough. There's a variety of things that they have to recover from. But I saw that they're going to be implementing a DBS check, which I guess is a check of each person's personal record, their previous convictions and other cautions. I'm not too familiar with the specifics of that, but it sounds like a good thing. Like they're making strides to kind of remedy the issues that they had in the past.
It's a background check, but the problem with any background check is if it hasn't been reported to any authority, it's not on your check. So if somebody doesn't report something that's happened, doesn't mean that something unfortunately hasn't happened. But they also work with Equity UK, who are actually more of they work for theatrical companies, and this is to try and offer guys more protection.
It's basically like a union, Equity. So they will give full safeguarding guidelines, specific things, just very basic things like women having their own locker room. That's something that wasn't in place necessarily before. Things are definitely improving, and I am 100% sure that the new owners of Progress are going to make sure that they are going in the right direction.
It had to change hands, though.
Yeah, it really did.
It did, because unfortunately Progress did get a little bit mud in that mud when you think of a lot of its top performers, some of the management team, even the referees.
Man.
So, but under this new management, you've already seen it. The guys, he took a step back. He kind of let the talent. It was almost like it's like running a madhouse, and that's what the WWE Network era sort of like became. It was very much the talent were running the show, and it was very evident at times. Just some really great work.
Yeah. That's good though. Anything to improve, that's a step in the right direction, if nothing else. And a clean slate, I think, is the best way to go. You can't really, some things you just can't fix. So sometimes it's better to just reset, get the ball going again.
They're bringing back the Super Strong Style 16, which is you're about to come on to that in a couple more shows. Right. You're about to go to the first ever Super Strong Style 16. So they're bringing back that huge weekend tournament. There's going to be a new natural progression series. They're reinstating the Atlas title by the looks of it, which again, you'll eventually come to that within a few shows. And another Revelations of Divine Love and another natural progression series. So still working with the young talent. And that's always something Progress has done well.
Yeah.
Another thing that could be very interesting is NXT UK wrestlers have suddenly started appearing for some of the independent promotions again. So Wolfgang, who wrestles for NXT UK, has been wrestling, and so Charles Samuels for ICW. And then a couple of other wrestlers have recently been going to other independent promotions. So it's going to be interesting to see if some of the sort of the more well-known Progress wrestlers like Mark Andrews, Eddie Dennis, Dave Mastiff might be released to go and do a show or two.
Right. Yeah. I saw Joseph Connors is doing a similar thing. I wasn't sure if he was fired or if
he left.
Okay.
He is a free agent.
Fired,
we
left.
do not. Well, I'm not sure if there's still been no word on whether his contract expired, whether he asked to leave, or whether we just know he is a free agent right now. He's the only one that we know is definitely a free agent.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if that was like if just added flexibility allowed him to do that or what the story was, but But otherwise, I mean, it's good to obviously to let people work wherever they want, especially in NXT UK, where it's not as arduous of a schedule, I guess, at least now, because they're not traveling. I'm just waiting for the day where Vince McMahon remembers that NXT UK exists and he just guts it all. But nobody say anything. Keep it hush hush. Let us watch probably the best brand in WWE in peace and quiet. But yeah, so back in time, Chapter 17. Like we said, like January of 2015, lots of stars that you see on NXT UK on this show. I mean, this show's damn near almost 100% of those guys. I was watching, it's like, man, there's every match, with a few exceptions. But we touched on it before, the vignette to open the show with Jimmy Havoc, which right away, it's just striking to me how quickly their like video quality has improved from the earlier chapters, because some of the earlier chapters, first of all, didn't have intros, but then once they started having intros, it'd be literally guys like on their phone, like it's clearly you have like sticks on his flip phone. It has like grainy video quality, and they're like back and forth promos between two people. But this is WWE quality, like easily, and like you mentioned, it's very Dexter-esque. You have Havocs and like a I don't know, it felt like a morgue. Some sterile environment. Havoc has like a knife in his hand, and he's licking it and rubbing it on his chest and his nipples and all that stuff. And there's a man who is saran wrapped, duct taped, whatever, to a bed of some sort, like a cot that you would see like in a hospital or something. But you can't see the man's face because it's covered by the Progress Championship. And Havoc's talking to him. He's basically building up to his match with Will Ospreay later tonight. Says that Will can only win with a 630, and he's not going to let that happen, which we'll get to in the main event. Very clever boy. And he says, if you think I'm just doing this for fun, what do you think I'll do to some little prick that I hate? And then Jimmy Havoc proceeds to stab the man that is taped to this bed multiple times. There's blood flying everywhere. It's getting all over Havoc's clothes and all over the room. Yeah, so a little murder to kick off the show. Thoughts?
Well, that's escalated quickly.
It did. I like the horror-esque vignette, but as Dan will tell you, I'm kind of squeamish about and yeah, it was good up until that point. I think you could have sometimes psychological fear can be worse than actual.
It could have been implied, I think.
The video nasty, but Havoc loves that stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, it's consistent with some of the stuff he does in his match later. So they're going all in on making him stand out from the rest, which I mean, he's red hot at this point, so I can't necessarily blame them. But after that, we have our opening match, which was scheduled to be Eddie Dennis versus Mark Andrews. And the scheduled match it was for the sole ownership of the tag team titles, which I heard that. I was like, what the fuck? What are we doing here? We're going to put the Shield parts together. Because remember, I don't know. Eventually they would have belts, right? Yeah. But we're still at the point where it's two halves of a Shield. It's just like, okay, I guess the winner walks out with the whole Shield. Cool.
They could go flapping out, one on each arm.
But before this match can start, the Faceless come out, which of course is comprised of Faceless number 1, Faceless number 2, and they're accompanied by Faceless number 3. So this is all from Cage Match, by the way. So so the Faceless come out, and they debuted at the last chapter by attacking FSU during a raffle of all things. Like I thought raffles were a safe space, but apparently they aren't. So now they're out here not to just beat them down, but to take their tag team titles. So the Faithless come out, they beat up on FSU. They basically just they take the titles without having a match. They're like, yeah, these are ours now. They walk out, or they start to walk out, but then Mark Andrews is back up. He gets back to his knees. He grabs a mic. He basically challenges them to a match right now, which is probably a poor choice in hindsight on the part of Mark Andrews. The Faceless accept, and the match is very quick because the previous beatdown, Faceless, they were able to capitalize on that, and a backpack stunner with a stomp combo by the Faceless gets them the win, and we have new tag team champions in progress, the Faceless. What you guys think of this whole deal? And what do you think of Faceless, I guess, as a faction?
They finally unmask on the next one, I think.
Good to hear they don't drag it out.
Yeah. It's... When you see who it is, I felt like they needed to do something with them.
I actually spoke to RJ Singh in my last Progress episode, and he told me it was Nathan Cruz, Danny Garnell, and I forget the third one.
Simon Musk.
Okay, so Nathan Cruz, I'm pretty pumped for, because I thought when I watched, like I said from the beginning, I'm like, oh, this Nathan Cruz, he's going to be the big deal in Progress, and then haven't really seen him in like 15 chapters, so that's interesting for sure.
Yeah, I quite like the whole Faceless thing. It's very British, having the V for Vendetta masks. So I liked that aspect of it. I also liked at the beginning when they attacked and did that DDT into the released German suplex. That was really smooth.
Yeah, that was awesome. Do you think that because this is kind of the era where I guess we're a little bit maybe a year past it, where the Shield and the Wyatt family were really popular in WWE. Do you think they were capitalizing? Maybe I'm looking too much into it, but do you think they're capitalizing on that 3-man dynamic? Because I think at this point in wrestling, it was pretty hot.
I'm trying to remember.
That's a good question, because at the same time, Havoc had 3 guys, didn't he?
It's kind of comes and goes with his faction, because like at the London riots, and then they left, and it's kind of a lot.
Havoc's team in total was 5: the big guy, Riot, and
Paul Robinson.
There were 4 in total of the Faceless.
Okay.
Eventually, but then they eliminate 2 straight away. It was, I think
wasn't Dave Mastiff a part of it as well? Or no?
No, I think he was.
I guess that's kind of a hard person to hide under a mask.
No, but it's definitely someone you've seen on all the shows. Danny Garnell, he was in the first 2 Progresses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, I guess there's not really a lot to this match. It's more just getting the titles off of FSU, which we would come to find out is because Mark Andrews just landed a TNA contract. Mandrews is upon us, ladies and gentlemen. So I guess this is Mark Andrews' last night, unless he comes back maybe in the future.
He just won British Boot Camp 2.
Oh, okay.
He literally, the night before, I think in the last chapter you had the Rampage and Samoa Joe match.
That was chapter 14.
That was chapter 14, yeah. So it was around that time.
Fairly recently.
That's when they were going to have the finals for British Boot Camp 2, and that's when, Mark Andrews, and that's why they had to
Samoa
take
Joe
the
is
title.
basically there to advertise for it, I guess, ahead of time, and I guess in the months.
And Eddie Dennis also got his job as a head teacher, which meant he had to step back from the amount of wrestling that he was doing.
Right. Yeah, for sure. But this, so the match happens. FSU, Eddie Dennis, Mark Andrews, they're laid out. They're obviously distraught over losing the titles. But Mark Andrews grabs the mic and he's talking to Eddie, and he's like, hey man, I didn't want this to be how my last night went. So he basically challenges Eddie to a proper match, which Jim Smallman then makes official. So in the second half of the show, we'll have Mark Andrews versus Eddie Dennis, which was definitely a proper match compared to this one. But before that, this next match, Mark Haskins versus Rampage Brown.
This was so good.
Yeah.
Dude, I was really impressed by Mark Haskins in this match particularly, because in the previous chapters, I mean, he's had some okay matches, but nothing like what we saw here. I thought he was definitely out there to make a statement. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I noticed he just had black tights, black boots. Like he was and occasionally he'd have like his own ring announcer. So he like eliminated all the pomp and circumstance from his like appearance, from his presentation. It was just pretty much pure wrestling. And I think that translated well because him and Rampage tore it down. Anything in particular stick out to you guys in this match?
Yeah, as you say, this is where he starts to take on that MMA influenced style rather than the wrestler based. He used to be quite a high flying wrestler, and then he picked up the injury, and that's when he went into MMA and started to learn jiu-jitsu, and that's when he transitioned his style to what we see now on formerly with ROH. But yeah, this is he starts to get a real crowd swelling of support over the next few chapters, which eventually leads him to have a really big period in progress for a long time.
I've really enjoyed this match. I'm a big Rampage Brown fan, and I love Haskins. I'm going to see him next week or the week after.
Next week. No, following week, yeah.
I'll kind of see him soon for Wrestle Carnival. It's going to be amazing, and for FNW. But yeah, Rampage, when you see him, he hits so hard, and that flying shoulder block he does is just a thing of beauty. Really is.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard so many people like within the business say that Rampage is one of the best heavyweights that there are. And it's evident when you watch him because he's like no bullshit. Like he just does the simple things, but very well, which I like. And Mark Haskins is another guy. It's like, I'm surprised he hasn't seen a bigger spotlight personally. I don't know. Maybe if is that his choice. I don't know what his deal is, but Mark Haskins is a guy that I think belongs at the very top of the industry, in my opinion.
He had an injury, probably around Progress 30-ish, 50-ish maybe. And he actually spent a lot of time out of the business for a time period.
Oh, really?
At one point, almost having to walk away before being able to come back. And yeah, he was finally getting his spotlight with ROH, and then just such a shame that lockdown happened, and now ROH is no longer there. But it's a plus for us. We get to see him more often.
Except ROH have just announced their next pay-per-view.
Right.
Well, they're not coming
April,
back
right?
as they were. They're not.
Well, maybe that's for the best.
Yeah.
So again, like progress. Maybe they're new slate. But yeah, definitely big fan of this match. A hot start by Haskins, which is like, it was very jarring because, like I said, he was very much the charismatic guy, but now he's like you said, like MMA influence, more strikes. He starts off with a pump knee strike, which knocks Rampage out of the ring because it's like either before the bell or right after the bell, so he caught him off guard. So, and then Haskins like goes for a suicide dive, but then does that like Phoenix, like that Ray Phoenix does, where it's like a 619 kind of to the outside, but then he slingshots back in, which is like, the hell did this come from? Like this guy's just coming off a leg injury, and now he's doing this shit. But he got like a rolling. Haskins rolls into a Death Valley driver. It's really impressive stuff by Haskins throughout this match, and he's pretty much taking advantage of the jump start, I guess, in the beginning, catching Rampage off guard. But Rampage eventually fights back, hits a big Samoan drop. This causes Haskins to kind of roll out of the ring. Rampage goes out to grab him, but gets hit in the face with a steel chair. Disqualification. Haskins gets back in the ring and hits Rampage with another chair shot to the head. Sets up a chair, sits on the chair, and then flips off Rampage. And this pretty much sets up a no DQ match at the next chapter between these guys.
It was a good match. You got to see the speed of Haskins as well as his strength, and it was quite a traditional heavyweight match in points. And as Andy will be very pleased, the referee did throw the match out because Andy does enjoy the rules.
Yeah, of course.
Have rules in wrestling, but yeah,
that the tag rope.
Yeah, tag ropes. That's a must. That has to be.
I agree.
The running Samoan drop that he did was really, really, because he kind of came out of nowhere. You think he's just going to go for number, and he just kind of goes into the center of the ring and really delivers him down hard to the mat.
Yeah, like I said, just does all the little things, but with a little extra oomph to it. But after that, we got El Ligero versus Marty Squirrel. A couple of problematic blokes here, but hey, we're in 2015. Everything's fine. No more Party Marty Squirrel, guys. Were you sad to see Party Marty no longer be a thing? Or are you even aware of Party Marty?
Yeah, I remember Party Marty, but I think this was, it was needed. I think it's even came from the original British boot camp where he was literally told, you need to go away. You need to find a new gimmick. You need to become, and this is where we start to see the emergence of the villain persona, even coming down to the ring with his signature umbrella.
I mean, I remember Marty because he did a lot of indie shows close to where I live because he's based in Cambridge. So he did do quite a few shows in sort of Cambridgeshire, Hertfordshire area. And yeah, he did need to up his game, which at this point he did.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's definitely where he found his stride, in my opinion. And this is the first, because it's kind of been a transition period, because there was a period where he was still going by Party Marty, but he happened to just be holding an umbrella. It's like, why does this guy have an umbrella? But now he's officially being announced as the villain and no longer Party Marty. And it's not just his name that's changed, but it's his whole demeanor. Kind of similar to Haskins. He in the past, he was very comedic. He was very lighthearted. Now he's very, like, he's still kind of silly at some points, like yelling chicken wing when he's about to do the chicken wing. And all like the classic all the classic villain stuff. But he's definitely more aggression and more, not a lot of wasted movement on his part. Again, this match starts with a jump start, which is like a running theme on this show. I feel like every match is like ding, 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 push, like it's right away. Umbrella shots, but before the bell, of course, he had to hit him. He had to hit Aguero with the umbrella a few times. Suicide dive to the outside, brings him back in the ring with an arm breaker. They brawl a little bit more on the outside. Aguero gets on this like ledge that's on the outside of the ring, is like, I don't know, 4 feet up, and he does a crossbody.
It's going to be 20, 30 feet up in the air.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. The Progress is a WWE affiliated company now, so you got to amplify that. It just made me laugh how Aguero was like, again, like 5 feet in the air, but he like so timidly like goes for the crossbody. But they fight back into the ring, pretty back and forth. You get a rolling surfboard stretch by Marty Squirrel. But ultimately, Marty wins after several attempts to get that chicken wing in. He finally lands it, locks Aguero into the chicken wing, and Aguero taps out. And a little win for the villain here. What'd you guys think?
Yeah, you'll see what happens with El Aguero in the next few chapters, but you can see at this point he's almost rudderless since he was the second champion, of course. But after he lost that, and he just dropped out of the main event picture so quickly that you'll see why they decided to change things up on the next few shows.
It was technically a very good match. There was a lot of technical wrestling in it. Just a shame the guys turned out to be a bit of a wanker.
Yeah. That's, a bit of a wanker indeed. But, also one thing about this show that I noticed, it just seems like a lot of singles matches. Like, I feel like when Progress was really good, they were able to kind of diversify their cards. So you'd have like a singles match, and then a tag team match, and then a hardcore match, and then like a comedy match, and then you have your title matches. This match seemed very like almost like a lot of it blurred together, because I mean we had Haskins and Rampage, and now you have Aguero and Squirrel, and then you have a few more singles matches after this. Did you guys get that impression while watching the show?
Yeah, especially when I guess if you look at the Haskins and Rampage match, it's been very similar to that of Tommy and a Mastiff match later in the show, where you've got technical wrestlers versus the big, strong powerhouse. But yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from. Very early ROH era.
Yeah. There was a lack of comedy in this one. And British wrestling traditionally always has comedy attached to it, and it was missing in this show.
Yeah, it's always a good way to just break things up. Not to go too overboard with it, but just include it, just to make, again, make it not just like a streamlined thing where it just feels like match.
Needed some Project Ego.
Yes. Or what's the guy without the shoes? Not Grado, the bald guy. Matt Manson?
Oh, Manson, yes. Mad Dog.
not
Was
Mad-
it Mad Dog Manson, or was it? But he was a dog though, wasn't he? And Colt Cabana threw the tennis ball for him.
Oh, you know what? No, I'm thinking of that's someone else. There is a Manson. There's a lot. They had a lot of comedy guys, I guess, but not on this show.
No.
But yeah. So every match, like I said, kind of seems to start off with like bell rings, immediate offense, and that's again in this next match. Tommy End versus Dave Mastiff. The bell rings. Tommy sprints at Dave with a pump knee, knocks Dave down. Gets the Tommy goes for the stomp off the top, hits it, but only gets a 2 count. But this match is only like 4 minutes at the most. It's a sprint of a match. You have this crazy exchange between the two where Tommy End goes for another stomp but misses. And then Dave gets back up and Tommy End like fakes a black mass, but then he ends up hitting it after Dave Mastiff like coils and then comes back up, which is a cool spot. But then Tommy End runs towards Dave Mastiff and Mastiff belly to bellies him into the corner, then hits a crazy deadlift German suplex and then a clothesline for a 1 count. So Tommy End he's like, fuck this. But then he gets Saito suplexed for a 2 count, and then Dave Mastiff then hits a huge power, like a sick looking power bomb, and that gives him the win. So Dave Mastiff borderline squashes Tommy End, which is crazy to me because I don't know how like much you guys watch WXW or if you were in tune with it at this point, but I've watched a bit of it, and Tommy End had a 1.5 year reign as their world champion. He was like unbeatable. And I switch over here, and he's just getting beat by Dave Mastiff in 4 minutes. So it is kind of weird how different they're almost like different universes sometimes. But well, what do you guys think about this?
It is exactly that. He is the brought-in guy to make. Everyone knows his background by that. The smart fans of Progress knew who he was, and they knew how good he was. So him coming over and then getting beat by the top guys of Progress, of course, gave the Progress guys the rubs. It's just a done-to thing. Even in the UK, if you got guys who are really good in the South, they will get brought up north and be jobbed out, and then you'll be the same. You'll have the North guys that'll be brought down south and jobbed out. It's just kind of the way it goes.
It was, however, believable with Mastiff because of his size, his technique.
Yeah.
It wasn't one of those ones where I look at it and think, nah, that was the wrong decision. No, that was an all right decision. And the release German, the deadlift German, he's got to start doing that more. I know he still does it in NXT UK, but he needs to do it more. It's just such a great move.
Yeah, and like you said, Dave Mastiff, he's firmly in the world title picture in Progress. He was in the main event of the last chapter, so it's not like he's just some jamoke that came in and beat Tommy End. But I guess that kind of plays into what they're building towards when you think about it. Because after the match, Tommy grabs the mic and he's like, "Well, that didn't go as planned." He says next time he's in Progress, he's not going to come alone. And there's a big SDS chant, which is the Sumerian Death Squad, his tag team with Michael Dante, who I'm vaguely familiar with, again, from WXW from what I've seen. But very timely given, because at the time of recording this is the day after Brody King debuted in AEW to form his tag team. And now we got him pretty much teasing another tag team here. So, what'd you guys think about him basically announcing Michael Dante was coming to Progress?
Yeah, it's good because he was obviously struggling in the singles division, so putting him into that tag team sort of picture gave him something to do. And the SDS, the Sumerian Death Squad, they have some great matches to come, especially against the Riots and a few other different teams.
Right.
He's a big boy. He's a Brody King type guy, so I guess used to. That's why Black teams like. That's why Alistair is now teaming with him. Or sorry, Malaki is teaming with Brody King.
I'm looking forward to seeing that tag team. I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic. Anything that bulks out a tag division, I'm always happy about because I really enjoy watching tag team wrestling.
Yes, and that's definitely, at least at this point, There's not really a tag division in progress. I mean, because FSU is no longer a team, and then you got some guys in masks and black hoodies are now your champions, and there's really not really any other tag teams in progress, or like consistent tag teams in progress.
You had the Hunter Brothers for a brief period, but they literally just came in for a couple of matches with the Riots.
I forgot about the Hunter Brothers, man.
Project Ego.
A week and a half ago, didn't we?
Yeah, Hunter. Because Lee Hunter's still regularly competing over in Repro UK at the moment, and part of Modern Nomad. But just who else was there? The London Riots.
Yeah, because I guess the London Riots come back. This unfortunately after Chris Travis got sick, so Project Ego isn't a team anymore.
Huge shame, because Travis has so much potential. I think anyone on the UK scene at that period who could have really become a world star, I think it would have been him. Yeah,
100%. But yeah, at least we got a regression still lingering around a little bit, and that's represented in this next match: Paul Robinson versus Noam Darr. Again,
this was really good.
Yeah, it was this. What this match amounted to was the crowd just chanting a lot of mean things towards Paul Robinson and Noam Darr just holding him up.
Throwing the socks at him.
Oh, God.
It's quite a big thing in England to take off your shoes and socks at wrestling shows now. It's become a thing.
Do you happen to know the origin of that?
It was a football chant. How everything starts with wrestling, I'm sure.
Well, say no more. It started with football. That makes sense.
Yeah.
What was your favorite chant from this match, if you have one?
Ooh, it's got to be the Dobby ones, really.
Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that you look like Dobby.
Well, he didn't by the end of it.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. He's maybe more so. Jimmy's little bitch. Jimmy's Precious.
That was my favorite.
That was a good one.
Of course, referencing that Paul Robinson is basically the second to Jimmy Havoc, the little creepy little bastard that follows him around. But the match as a whole was good. You know, you have Paul Robinson. He for some reason brings Silly String to the ring with him. He proceeds to Bukkake Noam Darr and the entire first row for some reason.
And there's a mental picture I'll be stuck with for a little while.
You enjoy that one. That'll be one to take to bed with you. But then after the Silly String, Paul Robinson decides to amp it up a little bit and grabs a chair. He brings it into the ring, but Noam does the reverse card and uses the Silly String to defend against this chair shot. I can't believe this is things that actually happened.
You wanted some comedy.
There's your comedy right there, I guess.
Comedy's meant to be funny. This was just a little bit sad.
It was something. It was definitely something that happened. So the Silly String, of course, causes Paul Robinson to drop the chair because the Silly String's all in his eyes and his fingers are tangled and all that stuff. So Noam picks up the chair. He thinks about using it, but he's like, wait, I'm a babyface. I don't do that. So he drops the chair, and this allows Paul Robinson to kick him in the gut. Takes advantage for a little bit. Paul Robinson goes to the top rope, flies at Noam Darr, but Noam slides under him to evade. And then the Darley chop. Man, I've heard about this spot. I've never seen it. I've seen the aftermath. But good God, did Noam just try to take his fucking head off with this chop?
Yeah, clearly broke his nose with that one.
You could say that. It was fucked. I mean, it really was.
It was so much blood just gushing everywhere. I mean, Paul Robinson, he like rolls to the outside. You see all the puddles of blood following him wherever he's crawling. It wasn't like, oh, my hand slipped. It was, he reared back, and it was great Khali strength in that chop.
That was obviously the extra weight he had behind it.
Well, there you go. Look, we're making fun of him for being all doughy, but Noam Darr, he had a purpose. So, joke's on us. But so Paul Robinson, he's like struggling to see because his fucking nose is shattered into a million pieces. This allows Noam Darr to kind of grab, I think it's someone's, I guess they sell like Jimmy Havoc masks with like the blood and all that stuff. He grabs one from the crowd. Noam Darr puts it on his face. He rolls Paul Robinson into the ring and goes for the Acid Rainmaker, which is Jimmy Havoc's finisher. So it's a little kind of poking fun at Paul's boy. But as he's about to go for the Rainmaker, Jimmy Havoc's music plays. And this distracts Noam Darr. We're getting very WWE here. This distracts Noam Darr, and this allows Paul Robinson to kind of to roll him up for a 2 count. Then Paul hits a sliding DDT for a 2 count. And then Robbo, he then goes for an Acid Rainmaker. But Noam counters it smooth as hell, into a knee bar for the tap out. So Noam Darr wins this one. And Paul Robinson, really a shithead, isn't he?
Yeah. He's so good at playing it, that guy as well.
Yeah.
And I just saw his return match in the UK recently, and the way he plays with the crowd during the entire match is just like brilliant.
Yeah. He's easy to hate.
Yeah, he loves to hate though.
Yeah, he thrives off it, but yeah, the move from the Acid Rainmaker into the knee bar, as you're saying about how smooth it is, you can't over exaggerate how smooth it is. It is an absolutely wonderful move. Really well done.
Yeah. Yeah. Noam Darr is legitimately like one of my favorite wrestlers going today. I mean, NXT UK, it seems like every match he has is like you could put on a top 10 list of matches, at least in WWE for sure. Definitely underutilized. Well, I guess he's found his place in NXT UK, but big fan of Noam Darr for sure.
His better matches usually go longer. If he has a short match, it'll only be average. But if he actually has quite a long match, then it'll be a good match. He just has that way about him for some reason.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a good thing he has that Heritage Cup nowadays, because those tend to be pretty long. But no hating over here. But yeah, after that, we have yet another singles match. Eddie Dennis versus Mark Andrews. So again, this was set up in the opening, basically, when they lost their titles, FSU did, and they're like, we're not going to end this way. We're going to have a proper match, and this is where it happens. And again, Mark Andrews just landed that TNA contract, so this is basically his hoorah, having a match with his buddy. And what I liked about this match is like you expect it to kind of be comedic. You expect it to be a lot of banter, a lot of jokes, and playing with the crowd a lot. And they do that a little bit in the beginning, but the way that they like instantly flip that switch, I thought was really impressive. And that was with the Eddie's on the outside. Mark Andrews goes for a plancha over the top rope. Eddie catches him and then does a brutal side spinning slam onto the apron on Mark Andrews. And I thought that did a good job at setting the tone for this match. What'd you guys think? Anything in particular stick out to you?
That's how British friends are. If you've seen them, there's a group called Northwest Strong, Chris Ridgway and the Young Guns. And if they're literally, they train together, they're best friends. But when they fight, they literally Walter and nearly a dragon off each other. And I think that if you're friends in the UK, you just tend to hit each other a little bit harder.
But that's real life as well.
Yeah.
So do you guys often like powerbomb each other just for jokes?
Usually.
Shits and giggles.
Hey, that's a different culture over there. Who knows? But yeah, this match, it's a fun back and forth match. Some really fun spots in this, like Eddie. So Mark Andrews goes for a standing moonsault as Eddie is laying on the mat. Eddie catches him in like a cravat position, gets back up in one fluid motion and does like a cravat suplex, which looked really impressive. Basically just grabs him by the neck and throws him across the ring. You got a next stop driver for a 2 count. You got Mark Andrews hitting the shooting star press for a 2 count. A lot of good false finishes in this match as well. Lots of points where I thought it might be it. There's a point where Eddie Dennis is going for a razor's edge, basically, off the second rope. but Mark Andrews counters, and Eddie goes into the crowd basically, and he just to scurry off to kind of catch his breath, and then Mark Andrews does a stage dive basically from the top rope into the crowd, just classic like stuff you'd see in Ring of Honor or something. So really cool spots. And there's TNA chants, by the way, after Mark Andrews does this, which is hilarious. Followed by boos, which, whatever. But ultimately, Eddie Dennis is able to hit the next stop driver off the second rope for the win. Just a really fun match, and I think a good note for Mark Andrews to leave on.
Nice to see him put over his friend on the way out.
Yeah.
He's another talent that's been criminally underutilized by WWE, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think he had one of the best matches of the year in NXT UK last year, and that was just one of the standard matches with him and Nathan Fraser. Just
great match.
Just an excellent match.
Yeah, for sure. And Eddie Dennis is such a good character, such a good promo as well. But yeah, two guys that we see in NXT UK nowadays, so it's good to see that they went on for more success. We got to mention that it's Mark Andrews' birthday here. The crowd, unprompted, the crowd just starts singing happy birthday to him. And I got to tell you this, because like I said, I'm pretty in the dark about what happens in the future of Progress. I was really expecting a Eddie Dennis heel turn here, which would have been so brutal because, Mark Andrews is leaving. It's his last match. It's his birthday. You're my best friend, buddy. This made everything worth it. Oh, man, all of me was expecting just a brutal heel turn from Eddie Dennis, but we didn't get it. But I guess wholesome content is good sometimes.
Bloody rare.
It does come eventually, a long time down the wrong road, though.
Right, yeah. I've vaguely heard of it, so I was like, this is where it happens, but I guess not. I guess that's maybe after Mandrews, but after that, speaking of NXT UK, we got some of the originals here. The Natural Progression Series, the second iteration of it. It's the finals of the Natural Progression Series. Zach Gibson versus Flash Morgan Webster. And I have a very important question for you guys just before we get into this. When does Zach Gibson shave his head?
Not soon enough.
What are we doing? Zachary.
This match just goes to show how good he was. Even back then, he's such an accomplished grappler, mat technician. He has the size. For me, it does my mind in that he hasn't been a WWE World Champion already.
You say about his size. Now, since he's gone to WWE, he wrestles more like Regal. He keeps himself sort of like more hunched over, so he doesn't look as big as he actually is. I'd forgotten that he's a fairly big boy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's very Nigel McGuinness-esque as well. That's what I always think about when I watch Zach Gibson wrestle. But yeah, and he's going against Flash Morgan Webster here, who's he's debuting the pants. So he's kind of slowly becoming what we know him as now. But yeah, just another really good match between two guys who are very early in their careers at this point. And that's kind of what the NPS is designed for, is these young up-and-comers or like lesser known people. So it's funny to see these guys involved in it when they're very prominent nowadays. I mean, Zach Gibson, he's on NXT US. So, but I agree. I think he has value as a singles for sure. And hopefully he does amount to that at some point.
I've been at a show where about 1,000 people took their shoes off for Zach Gibson.
Yeah. I mean, early NXT UK, that's kind of what the case was. And then they threw him in this tag team. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, there you go. And I guess him and James Drake were they a tag team before NXT UK?
Yeah. They become a tag team for Progress. Hold the tag team championships in Progress for quite some time. And I don't think they ever lose the Progress tag team championships again in a 1 or a 2-2 matchup. It was always like a fatal 4-way or a fatal 3-way. Whenever it was a straightforward tag team, Grizzled Young Veterans always won.
Now, there was something in this match that made me think back to Halloween Havoc Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero, there were a few different sections in this match that really seemed to lift from that amazing match back then, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, what were they?
It was a couple of different bits where the headbutt 450 kick out that went through was amazing. The arm drags into the arm bars, and just a lot of the exchanges of holds. It just reminded me quite a bit of that match.
Yeah. This match did quite a bit to kind of separate itself from other matches, which I thought was good. It just felt different. But you still have like the crazy, like very Paul London-esque dive to the outside from Flash Morgan Webster, like into the aisleway off the top rope. Like he like runs up the ring post, which is crazy. But again, a lot of good false finishes in this match as well. You got Gibson hitting the Tiger Bomb for 2 counts. Gibson's able to lock in the Shankly Gates, but Morgan Webster, he does, because we all see it all the time when somebody's in a submission and they crawl and then they do this and then they get it. But Webster added like another like layer to it where he did this and he was like, oh, I can't do it. They're like, oh shit, is he gonna tap out? So it's really great drama at that aspect. But he does get to the ropes eventually. Webster hits the Stun Dog Millionaire to counter a suplex. Hits his 450 for a very close 2 count. Zach Gibson's able to fight back eventually. Goes for a Tiger Bomb again, but Webster counters into a Hurricane Rana with the pin, and that gives Flash the win. So the second ever NPS winner is Flash Morgan Webster, which is funny because the first one was Mark Andrews. So Subculture ringing in the first 2 trophies for this series that Progress does, which is fun.
Which is more than Subculture will ever do in...
Hey, come on now. Danny Luna's great.
Hey, look, bunch of subs. If that's what they want to be.
It's whatever, I guess. But
we don't kink shame.
Yeah, any other thoughts on this match?
Again,
It's brilliant.
Yeah. For me, Gibson is at this point had so much potential and still does. I love him as a tag team as part of Grizzled Young Vets, but it's almost like he's going to miss that opportunity to be a world champion by himself if he carries on.
Yeah, I'm like you said, Grizzled Young Veterans. They're a great tag team, and I'm always a fan of legit tag teams, the guys that are designed to be a tag team together. But at the same time, it's like, man, yeah, he's such a. It's hard because you don't see a lot of really good heels nowadays, and when it comes to that, Zach Gibson, he's just the tippity top, in my opinion. And this match really showed that. I don't know, maybe one day we'll see that, but this match, Webster wins. And of course, when you win the Natural Progression Series, not only do you get a title shot in the future, but you get to reinstate someone to be in the next Natural Progression Series, which prompts a "We Want Jesus" chant. And luckily, Jesus is there. Pastor William Ever, or Bill Lever, is in the ring, and that's who Webster reinstates. So Bill Lever will be in the next NPS, which will be fun because he seems to be over for some reason. I guess who doesn't love Jesus, right? Well, there's probably a few people, but yeah. So that happens, so he reinstates Jesus, but then Jim Smallman's like, "Hey, Flash, when are you going to be challenging for that Progress title?" And before Flash can respond, Jimmy Havoc's music hits once again. And then you got Havoc coming out with Isaac Zurcher, who I'm not super familiar with. He just seems like a big dude. Anything on Isaac Zurcher? Big fans?
No, I can't really remember if he goes on to do anything of note at all. But I know his tenure with Progress is short-lived.
Thank God.
He reminds me a lot of a shaved Screwface Ahmed.
Yeah.
That's okay, I guess. I mean, that's not what I would have thought, but that makes sense to me. But yeah, I don't remember him being in previous chapters. He maybe just got lost in the shuffle in my mind the other regression members. But
I'm sure he's the one that helps Jimmy win the first championship by sliding into staff.
He might. You know what? Yeah, I get that. There was so much happening at that point, and he probably just got lost. But see, Havoc and Zercher come out, and Jimmy Havoc kind of distracts Flash Morgan Webster, which allows Zercher to jump Webster from behind, beats him down. Jimmy Havoc grabs the mic and he's like, "What happened last year won't happen to me," which last year Flash Morgan Mark Andrews won, and he immediately challenged Rampage, and Rampage had to come out. He wasn't prepared, and Mark Andrews was able to kind of catch him off guard and win the title off of Rampage Brown. So Havoc's prepared for that, and he's not going to let that happen again. And then it pretty much kicks off the main event. So Jimmy Havoc versus Will Ospreay, which again, at the time we're recording this is only I guess a week and a half after Wrestle Kingdom 16. Were you guys able to catch Wrestle Kingdom at all?
Yeah. Great show. And that main event, wow.
Oof. That's what I'm saying. It's bizarre watching 2022 Will Ospreay and then going back, I guess, 7 years earlier. Such a different presentation. Did you guys get that sense at all?
Yeah.
Or do you have a preference, I guess, to a version?
He looked like a kid. I mean, the heavyweight Will Ospreay's really only emerged over the last couple of years, but
yeah.
And when it's like there's no transformation for Will Ospreay for like 7 years, and then suddenly it's just bam, he's this huge heavyweight guy.
Hey, when you're in a pandemic, man, all you can do is eat and lift weights, so might as well just become a heavyweight on your spare time.
Well, I did one of those two things.
I'm with you.
You forgot to get Yeston Reese to do your nutrition plan and workout plans.
Yes, I must do that. And they're only £120 for a long time. You get a good thing. But anyway, I digress. I think Ospreay, in his younger days, is still so obviously going to be a massive, massive star.
Yeah, for sure. And he obviously Will Ospreay, he's filled out over the years. He's definitely obviously physically bigger, but I feel like it hasn't really slowed him down much, if at all. I mean, he's still like at Wrestle Kingdom. He was doing moonsaults off trusses. He's springboarding everywhere. I think he's even more clean and more smooth nowadays than he was here, I would say.
I think he picks his spots better now.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point. He's wiser, all that stuff. More of a dickhead, but I guess he's still kind of a dickhead here. But yeah, so to set the scene, so Havoc and Zercher, they're beating down on Flash Morgan Webster. Jim Smallman, he's like, "Hey, get your bitch off him," to Jimmy Havoc. And basically he threatens Havoc, like, "Hey, if Zercher doesn't leave, then I'm stripping you of the title." So Zercher has to leave, and we don't have to see that bald asshole anymore. So now we have a proper one-on-one match. Will Ospreay comes out. The match starts out, it's a brawl on the outside. We see that classic Sami Zayn DDT through the the turnbuckle and through the ropes, which is fun. There's a "you look like a tampon" chant towards Jimmy Havoc, which is
a great one.
Yeah. Wearing white shirt, white pants with blood on it. Like, you're just asking for it at that point. But they don't know he murdered somebody previous to this, so joke's on them.
Yeah.
Joke's on the crowd. But the story here, as was kind of laid out in the opening vignette, is that the 630 is Will Ospreay's main move, and that's what's he's gonna have to do to win the title. So there's several points where Will Ospreay, he goes to the top rope. He's very hesitant. He doesn't want to do it. And I don't know if I missed something or if this happened outside of Progress. Do you guys understand why Will Ospreay is hesitant to do the 630?
So now Progress at this time will run in some sort of almost like a weekly, it's like a B show, if you like. And was
it Endeavor?
Endeavor, yes, that's the one.
Okay, yeah.
And it was at an Endeavor show. He goes to hit his 630 and he lands hard. This is what the documentary on Amazon was about. This is the neck injury that bothers him for, well, all of his career. Probably to this day is the reason he took time off is because of the original neck injury he picks up, which would have been about a month before this show. So at this point, as you can imagine, he's just almost crippled himself trying to do a 630 in real life. So then they just decided to mirror it into the thing.
Yeah.
And as you see this, you see him experiment with the springboard cutter, which eventually becomes the Oz cutter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I gotta start watching Endeavor, is what you're saying. I guess important stuff does happen on those shows.
Watch the documentary; it's fantastic.
What is it called?
Osprey.
Yeah, on Amazon Prime.
Okay, they're making it easy for me. I like it.
And it's just after his Super Junior win. At first time he won the Super Junior.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out. But broken necks aside, as if that wasn't brutal enough, we got Jimmy Havoc channeling his inner Mike Tyson and biting the ear of Will Ospreay to the point where Will Ospreay's ear is bleeding all over the place. He's screaming. It's pretty violent.
I thought
it's like
we were debating this, actually, my missus, whether it was a blood pact or not.
I'm sure I saw him
Bite.
Yeah.
Guys, his ear got bitten. It was blood from Jimmy Havoc's teeth. You guys are really sounding silly right now. You know this?
It was still squeamish, to be honest. I didn't like watching it.
The screams of Will Ospreay,
Yes.
They're going to be in my nightmares for a long time. But then, yeah, it's as if this keeps on building on itself. Later in the match, Havoc bites the throat of Will Ospreay. Very Shayna Baszler. Yeah, so I guess that's where she got it from. This is a sick fuck, this Jimmy Havoc is. But
Yes, he is.
God, in a lot of ways. But anyways, later in the match, Jimmy Havoc, he goes for a Frankensteiner off the top rope. Will lands on his feet out of this, which is very impressive, very smooth looking, into like a rolling zigzag of some sorts for a 2 count. There's this one exchange in this match, which you guys probably know what I'm talking about, where it's just reversal after reversal. You have Osprey going for handsprings, then Jimmy Havoc catches him, goes for rainmakers. It's a lot going. I could even take notes on it. There's so much going on, but really, really smooth exchanges between these two. Definitely really good chemistry in the ring. It's probably one of the better straight up Jimmy Havoc matches that I've ever seen.
I believe I'm right in saying, and Andrew, I'm sure you'll be able to back me up, they both trained at the London School of Lucha Libre for a little while.
Yes, at this time, under Greg Burridge, I think.
Okay, so that makes sense that they have that chemistry. But Will Ospreay at some point goes for the 630 again, but again he hesitates, and this causes Jimmy Havoc to drop kick the ropes, and Will Ospreay fucking lands right on his head and neck, as if he hadn't been through enough trauma with this neck injury. He just lands right. I don't know how he landed. The camera didn't really pick up on it, but it looked brutal. Just the angle that he fell. And this cause so Will Ospreay keeps going up to the top rope. He kind of progressively gets more confidence in it, because he was about to hit it just then, but Jimmy Havoc happened to counter it. So what do you do when your opponent keeps going to the top rope? Well, you just take away the top rope. So Havoc just takes Ospreay, throws him into the crowd, eliminates him for a little bit, and then unscrews the turnbuckle to take the top one of the corners off, which then takes all the ropes on each side off. So now Will has no access to the top rope. So theoretically taking that out of his arsenal to 630, and then they get back into the ring. You got Havoc choking Will with this rope that he's now undone. And Ospreay, eventually he fights back, hits an enziguri, and hits the Essex Destroyer, which is, it's for anyone who doesn't know, it's the Canadian Destroyer, but a DDT instead of a pile driver. Brutal looking. But Havoc is able to get his foot on the bottom rope, which is just funny because you have Havoc, he's biting him. He's this brutal guy. He murdered a guy in the beginning of the show. He's biting this guy's ear off. He's taking off the top rope. Oh, nope, but you got to follow the rules. My foot's on the rope. So that level of dickheadery I enjoyed. But ultimately, Ospreay goes for the shooting star press, like a spinning shooting star press, almost a black arrow of sorts, off the second rope, which is really impressive. But he misses it. Jimmy Havoc hits the Acid Rainmaker, only for a 1 count though, which causes Jimmy Havoc to just go berserk, stomp on the head of Osprey really brutally, several stomps right to the head, and then hits a second Acid Rainmaker, and that gives Jimmy Havoc the win. So lots of things at play here, but I thought it was a great main event.
It was a very good main event. It was a Progress main event.
Yeah.
This is the rivalry that put Progress on the map. It was the Havoc and Osprey, and starting from around this point, I think it was chapter 13 where he attacks him during the after a tag team match, and he tries to cut his nuts off with the axe. I'm sure it was chapter 13, but yeah, the way it continues on for most of the first half of Progress is all about Osprey Havoc revisiting. But it's no wonder Osprey became the guy he is today.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely, even me, who's very ignorant to a lot of Progress stuff, you can tell that this is like on a completely different level, and I'm sure is what made this stand out amongst other UK indie wrestling. The storyline, the stories involved, because you can get great wrestling anywhere, but the story, Jimmy Havoc as a character was such a great heel. You got Will Ospreay, who's really gaining momentum at this point. I think it was just a perfect storm.
It's what took them both to the international stage.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so chapter 17, that brings chapter 17 to a close. Any other last thoughts, overall thoughts, or anything we missed?
Well, for Tea and Tights, whenever we are watching something, we always give a sugar rating. How many sugars in your tea out of 5? So what would your sugar rating be out of 5 for Progress chapter 17?
If I'm just going on a basis of the show itself and not the people on the show, I'd have to give it 4 sugars.
Yeah, I think 4 sugars is fair. I think, it's like we said, it didn't have the diversity and like types of matches that you would typically see. But the matches that occurred were all solid, and especially the main event. The main event alone was worth the price of admission, in my opinion. You got Mark Andrews, his last show, that great match. So yeah, I think 4 sugars in my tea, lads. Which
4 for me as well. The Morgan Zach Gibson match was my standout, and really enjoyed that.
Loved it.
I always love seeing Tommy End just beat the shit out of people. Even though he lost, he got his opportunity to get his offense in, and But once again, guys, thank you, guys. Tea and Tights. Thank you guys once again for making the time to watch the show, come on, talk about it. Where can everybody find Tea and Tights and follow you guys and listen to you guys?
On the Twitter, on the Facebook, we are literally at Tea and Tights Pod. And you can find us on YouTube via the bodyslam.net YouTube channel, and also on Spotify, just under Tea and Tights.
And also, if you want to see some more British wrestling, you can find us on Powered 4 TV, which is kind of like the Netflix of wrestling, with loads of brilliant British independent shows. And you can also get it for free for a month using the code TPOD.
Hell yeah. Yeah, you guys, I like you guys because you make it, me, an American, trying to get into British wrestling. You make it easy for me. You dumb it down. Well, you don't dumb it down, but you make it easy for somebody like me to understand. So always a good listen to your podcast. And
Thanks so much.
Once again, thanks for coming on.
And
thank you for having us.
Pleasure to be on today.
Once again, thank you to Dan and Andy from the Tea and Tights podcast for joining me on this rootin' tootin' good time, talking about some Progress wrestling. Like I said, go follow the Tea and Tights podcast. Listen to it wherever you listen to podcasts. Go listen to them wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow them at Tea and Tights Pod on Twitter for all of their happenings. And if you like this type of episode, maybe you jumped in, you're like, let me check out some Progress for the first time ever. If you enjoy these kind of reviews, and if you want to start from the beginning, from chapter 1, go to apronbump.com, go to the episodes tab and select Progress Wrestling. And that'll bring you to all of the Progress reviews that I've done thus far from chapter 1 all the way to here, chapter 17. Always a good time. always a fun time watching a promotion that I've never watched and talking to people who are watching me react to it in real time. So that's always fun. The last chapter as well, chapter 16, was a particularly fun one because I brought on RJ Singh, who was a very prevalent fixture in Progress Wrestling, especially during their early years. It was cool to get his insight on the company as a whole, but also on one of his most important matches of his career that occurred at chapter 16, which we talked about. So go check that episode out, if nothing else. But yeah, that's about all Daddy has for you today. Apronbump.com for all my episodes. Apron Bump on Twitter. Apron _bump on Instagram. Apron Bump on Pornhub. All the usuals. So I'm gonna go fucking blow my nose because this shit, I don't know if it's coming off through your ears, but I feel like I'm like my nose is getting pulled up to the sky with this shit. What if my podcast is just making like random sniffle noises? Isn't that what Twitch is? Don't people just get on and just, that's ASMR, I guess, right? Just eating their watermelons. Oh, here, let me drink my coffee, gang. Oh God, fuck! Why'd I do that? That went right up my nose, but the other way, so it didn't help. Are you still here? Why are you still listening to this shit? No, I really do love you all. Thank you so much for listening. Yeah. I'm hard.
Yeah. And the hardest, talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing I guess. Let's get it started. It's the hardest, talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what hard is. Standing strong and proud, nothing I guess. Let's get it started.